The lake was still that evening. A light breeze swept over the surface, casting ripples that reflected the orange glow of Ryan Mitchell's carefully built fire. Nestled in a small pit surrounded by stones and set 20 feet from the shoreline, the fire crackled softly, casting flickers across the porch of Ryan's lakeside cabin. Grace, his 10-year-old daughter, giggled as she held a stick with 2 marshmallows over the flames. "You think Mom would have liked this?" Ryan smiled, bittersweet. "Yeah, she loved the lake," said. "The stars always looked clearer out here." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the quiet speak where words didn't need to. Then sirens flashing. Lights sliced through the trees. Grace's head whipped around. Dad, 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up along the gravel edge of the property, tires crunching to a halt. One deputy stepped out, hand resting on his holstered sidearm, the other gripping a clipboard. Their expressions were neutral but alert. "Sir," the first deputy said as he approached, "we got a call about a possible fire violation. That your fire?" Ryan stood slowly, shielding Grace slightly with his side. "Yes, sir. I've got a permit. It's a recreational fire, and I'm following every county regulation. No open flames outside the pit, distance from structures is over 20 feet, and there's a water bucket right there." The deputy didn't look aggressive, just procedural. "Mind showing us the permit?" Ryan nodded and stepped toward the porch, retrieving a laminated copy from a drawer in the mudroom, but before he could hand it over, a sharp voice cut through the night. "There it is. Told you." Karen Lansbury appeared at the end of the driveway, arms folded, blazer too formal for the woods. She strode forward like she owned the place, because in her mind, she did. "This is exactly what I meant when I said the new people don't respect the community standards," she snapped, glaring at Ryan. "Bonfires on a Sunday night. Next thing you know, he'll be parking an RV here." Ryan kept his voice calm. "This is my land. This cabin's been in my family since 1984. I have the right to a controlled fire. County rules apply, not HOA fantasy." Karen scoffed. "You think that patch of lakefront makes you special? You're still part of Pine Ridge Lakes, and here, we follow a code." He handed the deputy the permit. "I suggest she read this before." Quoting her own constitution, the second deputy reviewed the document. "It checks out. Everything's by the book. No violation here, ma'am." Karen's eyes narrowed. "This isn't over." The lead deputy sighed and nodded toward Ryan. "Sorry to disturb you, sir. You're good to go." Ryan smiled politely. "No problem, officer. Just trying to enjoy a night with my daughter." But Karen stayed behind as the cruisers turned back toward the main road. She stood at the edge of the firelight, eyes fixed on Ryan. "I don't care what paper you wave around," she said coldly. "That lake is part of the community, and that fire, that's not what we do here." He tilted his head slightly. "It's legal and disrespectful." There was silence. The fire cracked. An owl hooted in the trees. Then Ryan said something that made Karen's lips twitch. "Funny, you call 911 over a campfire, but not when your drainage pipes leak into the lake. Do you sure you're protecting the community, or just your control?" Karen flinched just slightly, but enough. With a final glare, she turned and walked back toward her Lexus. As she drove off, Ryan sat back down next to Grace. She handed him a half-burned marshmallow. "She's scary." He chuckled softly. "She's loud, not scary." But deep down, Ryan knew what people like Karen could do. He'd seen it in courtrooms and project sites, people who built power out of rules, then weaponized them. This wasn't just about a fire. It was about control, and Karen had just sparked a war she wasn't ready for. Ryan looked back out at the lake, its surface now pitch black beneath the night sky. And under that calm surface, history waited. Because what Karen didn't know, what would turn everything upside down, was that the lake she tried to control wasn't hers. It was his. And the water flowing beneath her street, legally, quietly, and entirely, belonged to him. By Monday morning, Ryan didn't need to check his mailbox. Karen's retaliation was already waiting in his email inbox. Subject: official warning, violation of community standards. The message was dressed up in legalese, but its tone was unmistakably Karen. It cited a reckless fire hazard, disregard for community values, and a vague claim that the communal tranquility of Pine Ridge Lakes was jeopardized. No mention of the county-approved permit, no mention of the deputy's clearance, just a threat. Further incidents may result in fines or community board review. Ryan exhaled. Here we go. By midweek, the pressure escalated. A notice appeared taped to the trunk of the oak tree near Ryan's driveway. Unregistered canoe rack, violation 6.3b. Then came an anonymous complaint about his wind chimes being disruptive to neighboring residents. Peace. The chimes barely moved unless the wind picked up off the lake. But that didn't matter. Each new citation felt less about actual violations and more about Karen trying to break him down. Grace noticed too. "Why is that lady mad about our wind chimes?" he asked during breakfast, pouring syrup over waffles. Ryan tried to keep it light. Some people just don't like music unless they're the ones choosing the song. But inside, he was boiling. He'd dealt with bureaucratic bullies before, people who hid behind policies. abuse procedures to twist the world into their own little kingdoms, and Karen. She was running her HOA like a petty fiefdom that night. Ryan pulled out an old file box. Inside were deeds, maps, and documentation from his grandfather's original land. Acquisitions decades old but meticulously preserved. He'd always known the lake was part of the parcel. What he hadn't realized was how deep that ownership went. A map caught his eye. Faded lines traced not only the lake's surface, but its bed, extending beyond the visible shoreline and beneath parts of the development that Karen's HOA governed. Ryan's finger followed a dotted boundary labeled Mitchell Easement, subsurface water rights, 1984 filing #1788CH. His eyes widened. Wait, he pulled up the county property database, searched the parcel number, and matched it to his deed. Beneath Karen's neighborhood, specifically Willow Bend Street and its storm runoff system, was a legally documented subsurface water flow zone. Owned by Ryan. He ran the search twice. Then a third time. Same result. Karen's entire drainage infrastructure ran through the land his grandfather had quietly purchased for water preservation decades ago. She didn't just trespass with her fake fire citations. She was standing on his property. She just didn't know it yet. Ryan sat back, a slow grin forming. She wants to play rules. Fine, let's play by the real ones. The next morning, Ryan drafted a letter. Not an angry rant, just a calm, precise legal notice. To the Board of Pine Ridge Lakes HOA. This letter serves to inform you that the storm runoff and drainage systems beneath Willow Bend and the associated flood basin directly infringe on a water rights easement owned under parcel number 8814M, registered in the name of Ryan Mitchell. As of this date, continued use of said infrastructure without a formal agreement constitutes trespass and unpermitted utility usage. He CC'd the county, the HOA board, and of Corcoran Lansbury. That evening, the response came from Karen directly. Subject: baseless claim. Threatening legal action as grounds for board review. She accused Ryan of intimidation, disruption, and malicious interference with the functioning of the community. But now, she sounded less smug and more desperate, because Ryan had facts, paperwork, land rights, and Karen had a shaky HOA charter and a dwindling grip on the people around her. The neighbors started talking. Whispers circulated at the community mailbox. Did you hear Ryan owns the lake? Karen tried to find him for a campfire. Now she might be the one in trouble. She always acts like she's in charge. Maybe she finally picked the wrong guy. Late that Friday, just before sunset, Karen marched up to Ryan's dock. Her tone was ice. You think you're clever? Trying to embarrass me in front of the board? Ryan stood on the edge of the dock, eyes on the water. Not trying anything, just protecting what's mine. Karen's voice rose. You're bluffing. The HOA owns this land. Ryan turned slowly, handing her a printed copy of the parcel map. No, Karen, you manage homes. I own the lake, and the water under your street. Karen blinked, lips parted, but no words came. The sun dipped lower behind the trees. Silence stretched. Then Ryan added quietly, this war you started, it runs deeper than you think. And with that, he walked away, leaving Karen standing alone and call deep in water she no longer controlled. Karen didn't waste time. By the following Monday, she summoned an emergency HOA board meeting in the community clubhouse. No notice, no invitation to Ryan. The agenda: a proposed amendment to restrict all waterfront activity, fires, boats, fishing, lighting, and any alterations that might disrupt visual harmony. Inside the room, Karen stood behind the podium like a judge presiding over trial. We are facing a direct threat to the order we've built here, she declared to the small group of board members and a few concerned residents. One homeowner has taken it upon himself to challenge the structure of our community. We cannot allow that to stand. There were murmurs. A man near the back raised his hand. Isn't he just using his legal rights? He owns that land, doesn't he? Karen didn't blink. Even if he does, the spirit of this neighborhood is unity, and unity requires rules. The board reluctantly passed her proposed ordinance 5-2. The new rule would ban all HOA-approved outdoor activity within 50 feet of the lake edge. Ryan received the notice that evening, a thick packet printed in aggressive bold font with half a dozen citations. Karen had personally highlighted the new rule, claiming his dock lights were a glare hazard, his canoe rack was not, and his daughter's tire swing unsafe and out of character for the natural aesthetic. Grace saw the packet and frowned. They want us to take down my swing. Ryan stayed calm, but his jaw clenched. They're just trying to scare us. It's noise. But even as he reassured her, he knew it wasn't just noise. Karen had weaponized the board, and she was doing it with surgical precision. Later that week, Ryan attended the HOA's public meeting. The room was half full, neighbors with mixed expressions, many of whom had never seen him speak. Karen sat at the head table, expression tight as he approached the microphone. He placed two documents on the table before her, a certified deed from the county, and a copy of an environmental impact survey. I'm not here to argue opinions, Ryan said, addressing the room. I'm here with facts. The room hushed. This, he pointed, is the legal deed showing that my property includes not just the lakefront, but the lakebed and the water flow beneath Willow Bend and parts of Ridgecrest Lane. This HOA has been operating drainage lines through my property for years. Without consent, gasps broke out across the room. Karen interjected. This is irrelevant to community guidelines. No, Ryan said firmly, turning to the audience. This is about overreach. My fire was legal. My lights meet county code. My daughter's swing is safe. What's not legal is using my land and trying to fine me for defending it. A neighbor near the front stood. Is this true, Karen? The HOA doesn't own the lake. Karen faltered. We have long-standing easement agreements. Where are they? Another voice called. She couldn't answer. That night, neighbors began to talk more openly. The next morning, 2 anonymous letters appeared in Ryan's mailbox, one apologizing for siding with the board, another encouraging him to keep standing his ground. But Karen doubled down. The very next day, she sent a contractor to inspect Ryan's property line, snapping photos of his dock, his compost barrel, even his dog's fenced-in area. Ryan stood silently as the man took notes on a clipboard. You work for the HOA? Ryan asked. The contractor nodded. They said it was routine, but between you and me, I've never been asked to inspect lake water before. Ryan chuckled under his breath. Tell them to bring a snorkel next time. That evening, Grace came running in, teary-eyed. Dad, Mrs. Lansbury yelled at me. She said if I didn't take down my fairy lights, the HOA would fine us. Ryan froze. Where were you? Just on the dock. I was turning them on. That's our dock. That was the final straw. Ryan opened his laptop and filed a formal complaint with the county zoning board, complete with his deed, a photo of Karen's contractor on his shoreline, and copies of every violation Karen had sent. He wasn't just defending his home anymore. He was building a case. At the next board meeting, Karen's tone had changed. She looked tired, worn, even a little nervous. Several board members avoided her gaze. Ryan sat silently in the audience, watching it unravel. When she tried to introduce a new rule about lakefront fencing, one of the members raised a hand. Karen, maybe we should pause. There's ongoing legal review now. Her lips thinned. This community needs discipline. Another member replied gently. No, this community needs balance. Ryan left without saying a word. Karen shot him a look, one that no longer carried power, just panicked. She had built her kingdom on rules, but now, the ground beneath, it literally belonged to someone else, and he wasn't backing down. The first rain of the season didn't seem unusual at first. A light drizzle in the afternoon turned into a steady downpour by nightfall, tapping against Ryan's cabin roof like a gentle warning. By morning, that warning turned into reality. Willow Bend, a neatly paved street leading into the heart of Pine Ridge Lakes, was underwater. Not inches. Inches had come before. This time it was feet. Water crept up driveways. Mailboxes floated. Karen's pristine front lawn had turned into a muddy soup, and her white Mercedes sat in the driveway with water sloshing around its tires. By the time the sun rose, neighbors were sloshing through ankle-deep floodwater, yelling across yards. Panic spread faster than the flood, and Karen? She was already on the phone with 911. It's sabotage, she cried. He's dammed the lake somehow. He's weaponizing the water. You have to stop him. Deputies arrived, same ones who'd come for the campfire. This time, they didn't get out of the car right away. They just watched the water slowly rise. Ryan walked down his gravel drive, umbrella in one hand, folded paperwork in the other. One deputy rolled down the window. You got something to say, Mr. Mitchell? Ryan calmly handed him a document through the window. Injunction filed 3 days ago. Temporary valve systems were legally installed to regulate overflow through my property pending resolution of a county easement dispute. Everything's within code. The deputy flipped through the pages, recognizing the county seal. You're saying the stormwater backup is a side effect of an existing legal issue? Not my intention, Ryan said. But when someone uses your land without permission for years, and then tries to fine you for living on it, well, things get complicated. Karen stormed out, drenched and livid. You're flooding my street. That's criminal. You think you can hide behind paperwork and technicalities? Ryan met her in the middle of the street, water swirling around their boots. I'm not hiding, he said calmly. I filed everything. You had your chance to negotiate. You chose war. The HOA board held a special meeting the next day, this time not in the community clubhouse, but virtually, due to weather conditions. Karen, sitting in her home office with wet hair and smudged mascara, tried to spin the narrative. The flooding was deliberate. We cannot allow one resident to hold this community hostage. But one of the board members, Mrs. Kim, wasn't having it. I've lived here 12 years, and we've never had flooding like this until you started poking a property owner with legal land beneath our feet. Another chimed in. This isn't about the lake anymore. It's about how you've handled everything. Karen's voice shook. So now I'm the villain for trying to protect the neighborhood. No, Ryan's voice came through the speaker. You're the villain for pretending you had power you never owned. By the weekend, a county inspector arrived at Ryan's cabin. After an hour walking the property, he stood on Ryan's dock, clipboard in hand. You're within your rights, he said. Truth is, The HOA's runoff plan never should have relied on private lakebed flow. It's a mess, but legally, you're clear. Ryan nodded. I'm not looking to make enemies. I just want them off my back. The inspector chuckled. Well, based on the flooding, I'd say they're starting to drown in their own mess. That night, Ryan and Grace sat on the edge of the dock, feet dangling above the water. A faint pink sunset reflected across the surface. Is it bad that I don't feel bad? Grace asked softly. About the street and everything? Ryan looked at her. You don't have to feel bad. You didn't start this. Neither did I, she nodded. I just hope they leave us alone now. He gave her shoulder a squeeze. They're going to have to. Behind them, the soft lights of lakeside cabins glowed. Further up the hill, Willow Bend remained dark, power lines knocked out, homes still wet. Karen's house, once the pinnacle of control, looked small in the distance. The water had risen, and it wasn't just the lake, it was the truth too. The morning after the flood, Karen was a woman unraveling. Her porch was piled with sandbags. Her front yard was strewn with yellowing flyers reading neighborhood safety first. A failed PR campaign she'd launched overnight, accusing Ryan of eco-terrorism and malicious misuse of property rights. But it was too late. The community had begun to turn. Her phone rang nonstop, not with support, but with complaints. My mulch floated into the street. Karen, the drains backed up again. Why is the HOA emergency budget being used on flood pumps instead of real repairs? Did you really scream at a 10-year-old over fairy lights? She hung up, sat in her soaked robe, and stared at the blinking cursor on her HOA group chat. Karen, we are under attack from a resident who does not value unity. I'm requesting immediate approval to initiate legal proceedings against Mr. Mitchell. There were no replies, just a single read receipt from board member Kim. Ryan, meanwhile, stayed quiet, not passive quiet. He was meeting with a land use attorney. He documented everything, every photo of the flooding, every recorded HOA visit, every inspection report. His laptop had a folder titled Karen_War, and it was growing by the hour. But Ryan didn't want a courtroom brawl. He just wanted Karen off his property and out of his life. Still, Karen wasn't done fighting. By Friday, a white van pulled up at Ryan's cabin unannounced. A man in an orange vest stepped out, clipboard in hand. Morning, he said. You, the owner here? HOA hired us to start a utility pump install. Emergency drainage. Ryan narrowed his eyes. On whose authority? The man looked confused, just following work orders. We're digging a relief trench from the east. Ridge ... right through here. He pointed toward Ryan's dock. Ryan stepped forward. That's my shoreline. You set a shovel in that dirt, and you'll be trespassing. The man hesitated. You sure? Ryan didn't blink. Positive. You got 5 minutes to pack up, whore? I called the sheriff. The contractor backed down fast. No argument here, sir. The van pulled out. 10 minutes later, Karen showed up. Raincoat? Clipboard? Fury. You're obstructing emergency infrastructure, she snapped. You're risking the homes of this community. Ryan calmly recorded the exchange on his phone. You sent a private crew to dig on private land without permission. That's not leadership, Karen. That's illegal. She pointed a finger at him, voice shrill. I will take you down for this. You don't belong here. You don't care about this neighborhood. Ryan lowered the phone. I care enough not to flood it. You're the one who refused to update the HOA drainage plan for 15 years. Now it's failing and you're blaming me. Karen's face twisted, but she had no comeback. Later that day, Ryan received an envelope slipped into his mailbox. No stamp, no sender. Inside, a handwritten note. Ryan, we're not with Karen. Not anymore. If you need witnesses, we'll be there. Enough is enough. Neighbors who've had enough folded inside were for HOA violation. Notices identical to the ones Karen had sent him, except these were marked void in red ink, with initials of board members. Ryan smiled. The tide wasn't just rising against Karen, it was turning that weekend. Karen went door to door. She knocked on every neighbor's house with a clipboard and tight smile, trying to rally support. She's unhinged. One neighbor whispered after closing their door. She yelled at my husband because his trash bins were out for 8 minutes. Another said, now she wants to sue the lake owner. Some didn't even answer. At one house, a teenage boy yelled from inside. Mom says we're not signing anything. Karen's smile cracked more each time. At Ryan's door, she didn't knock. She just stood on the gravel, staring at the cabin, as if it had grown teeth. Inside, Ryan sat at his desk, drafting one final document, a formal cease and desist to the Pine Ridge Lakes HOA, citing repeated trespassing, harassment, and attempted unauthorized construction. He emailed it to the entire board. Then he opened a new message, typed the county, environmental department's address, and attached every photo he had of the runoff pipes that ran through his lakebed. This wasn't just about property anymore. Karen had built her control on a system that was rotting beneath her. And the moment the county stepped in, that system would collapse. That night, Grace placed a tiny solar lantern on the Doquan, shaped like a firefly. Still okay to light things out here? She asked. Ryan smiled. Out here, we make our own rules. The legal kind. In the dark, The firefly glowed and up the hill. Karen sat at her window, watching the tiny light in the distance, flickering proof that her control was slipping through her fingers, like water through a cracked pipe. The knock came early just after sunrise. Ryan stepped onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, to find Sheriff Colton waiting at the bottom of the steps. He was in uniform, but his stance was casual, arms crossed, sunglasses tucked into the front of his vest. "Morning, Ryan," the sheriff greeted, tone measured. "Mornin'," Ryan said. "You here for the view, or something else?" "Sheriff." Colton gave a half smile and held up a clipboard. "Got a report filed by Pine Ridge Lakes HOA. Allegations of obstruction, water interference, endangerment of neighborhood infrastructure." Ryan sighed, unsurprised. "Karen again." Colton nodded. "I figured, mind if I take a look around?" "Go ahead. I've got coffee if you want some. The lake's real polite in the morning." The sheriff chuckled, then got to work. He inspected the small valve system near the runoff basin, took photos, reviewed the layout against the copy of Ryan's land deed, which Ryan had already printed and highlighted in anticipation. "This here's the key," Ryan said, pointing to the faded document, filed in 1984, subsurface and lakebed rights. "All legal. The runoff pipe from Willow Bend runs right across it. They've never paid, never requested access, and never maintained it." Colton studied the paperwork, then looked across the water, toward the neighborhood now dry again but still bearing the stains of last week's flooding. "And now they're saying you're interfering with the system." "I'm regulating what's mine," Ryan replied, "not blocking it. Just monitoring flow until the county weighs in." The sheriff nodded. "Well, this isn't criminal. Not even close. If anything, Karen's the one poking the hornets." "Ness, I'm filing this one under civil dispute." Ryan smiled. "Appreciate it." But before the sheriff could leave, a car engine revved up the hill. Karen's white Mercedes pulled into Ryan's drive, splashing through gravel, and came to a dramatic halt. She stepped out, holding a folder full of papers and a face full of fury. "You're going to regret this," she barked. "You think hiding behind legalities makes you right? This isn't over." Colton stepped forward. "Karen, that's enough. You're on private property, and your claim doesn't hold." She turned on him. "Sheriff, you can't just ignore what he's doing. He's putting the whole community at risk. The infrastructure was fine for years until he started meddling." Colton raised a brow. "And that infrastructure, as you call it, has been illegally running through his property for decades. That's what the deed says. He's well within his rights. Unless the HOA wants to negotiate a proper easement and pay for the privilege, you're the one crossing lines." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Just shallow, stunned silence. Ryan stepped forward. "You want to dig on my land again? Karen, you'll need a court order. And judging by the county's tone when I spoke to them yesterday, you won't get one." She gritted her teeth, holding up her stack of documents, her final hand. But Ryan raised a hand, cutting her off. "I've filed the C and desist. I've sent the lakebed ownership to the zoning commission. The county is opening a full review of the HOA's stormwater use. You've got 7 days to respond before they step in, and once they do, the HOA's liability could explode." Karen blinked, visibly shaken. Then, as if trying to recover, she straightened her back. "I'll take this to the board. This isn't over." Colton gave her a hard look. "For your sake, I hope it is." 3 days later, an official letter from the County Department of Water and Land Use was delivered to every Pine Ridge Lakes homeowner. Notice of violation and pending investigation due. 2 recent reports and documentation provided by resident Ryan Mitchell. The county is initiating a formal inquiry into the HOA's unpermitted use of private lakebed property for stormwater drainage. All related activity must cease immediately pending review. The neighborhood buzzed. Karen tried to downplay it, calling it a technical misunderstanding, but no one bought it anymore. Board member Kim scheduled an emergency session and emailed, "All residents, urgent HOA meeting, board leadership vote will be held." Karen had finally pushed too far. The night before the vote, Ryan stood once more on his dock. Grace sat beside him, legs swinging over the edge. "Is it done?" she asked. He stared out at the dark water. "Not yet, but it's close." Up the hill, porch lights flicked on and off as neighbors read their letters. Karen's house remained dark. But in the silence, the weight had shifted. The HOA had spent years trying to control everything. Now, the one thing they never paid attention to, the water, had taken all that power away. Ryan had thought the storm was behind him. Karen's influence was crumbling. The county was involved, and the HOA board was finally questioning everything they'd allowed under her rule. But what he didn't expect was a call from someone completely outside the HOA drama. It came on a Thursday morning from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Paul Reyes. I'm a senior engineer with the county's utilities division. We've been reviewing historical infrastructure lines as part of the stormwater audit you triggered. There's something you should see." Ryan leaned against the porch railing. "Go ahead. You're the legal owner of lakebed parcel 8814M, correct?" "That's right." "Well, that parcel includes a subsurface section that extends under several developed lots, including one critical utility conduit from 1976. It runs directly under Willow Bend Street and specifically beneath 139 Willow Bend Drive. Ryan paused. Karen's house. Yes, sir. We reviewed original sewer and stormline maps. Back then, the county built underground utility access across what they assumed was public land. But they never formalized the easement. No compensation. No recorded permission. That section of pipe, plus a secondary pressure valve, rests entirely on your subsurface parcel. Ryan nearly laughed. You're saying the main utility line under Karen's house sits on land I own? The engineer didn't miss a beat. Legally speaking, yes. And if you don't grant access, county crews can't maintain or repair it, which given the age of that pipe could become an emergency real soon. 2 hours later, Ryan stood at his dining table, papers and maps spread out like blueprints of quiet vengeance. He stared at the shaded block labeled Pressure Access Valve minus 1976 installation, right beneath Karen's foundation. The HOA had never known. Karen had never known, and now, Ryan had every right to deny access, demand back pay, or even file an injunction that would force an environmental review of her home's construction. But he didn't feel triumphant. He felt focused. This wasn't about payback anymore. It was about ending the stat at the next HOA emergency meeting. The clubhouse was packed. Neighbors sat stiffly in folding chairs. Board member Kim stood at the front, visibly exhausted, holding a packet of documents with a red county watermark stamped on top. Karen was late. When she finally entered, she looked different, shaken. Wearing plain jeans instead of her usual designer blouse. She had no clipboard, no files, just a desperate glare aimed straight at Ryan, who sat silently in the back row. Kim called the room to order, due to legal concerns raised by the county, an ongoing investigation into unauthorized infrastructure. The board will now entertain a motion to remove Karen Lansbury as HOA president. Gasps and whispers spread. Karen stepped forward. Before you vote, you need to understand something. This man, she pointed toward Ryan, he's not trying to protect his land. He's trying to destroy our community. Kim raised a hand. Karen, stop. No. He filed with the county to block our repairs. He's been manipulating technicalities to make us look like criminals. Now he claims to own the pipes under my home. Someone in the crowd muttered, he does. Karen spun toward the audience. You think this is fair? You think he cares about Pine Ridge? Ryan finally stood. His voice was calm but carried. I care enough to stop someone from ruling over this place like a petty dictator. I care enough to hold this board accountable for using land they don't own, for bullying residents, for ignoring every voice but their own. Karen's lips trembled. This is harassment? No, Ryan replied. This is consequence. Kim cleared her throat. We'll now take a vote. One by one, hands rose. All but one were in favor. Karen's fell last. She packed her bags. That weekend, neighbors watched through curtains as movers loaded boxes into her car. No tears, no goodbyes, no ceremony. Her reign ended with silence, but before she left, she taped one last letter to the HOA clubhouse door. Enjoy your precious lake, you deserve everything that comes with it. Ryan found it that night while walking Grace's dog. He pulled it down, folded it neatly, and tossed it into the recycling bin. Peace. At last, he muttered. Grace ran up behind him. Did she really leave? He nodded. She's gone. What'll happen to her house? Ryan looked up the hill, where Karen's porch light no longer glowed. Depends who moves in, he said, but if they try to dam the lake again, I've got maps ready. The weeks after Karen's departure felt like the first clean breath after a long storm. No more passive-aggressive flyers. No more HOA citations with bright red ink. No strangers snapping photos of dock lights or measuring fences with laser pointers. Pine Ridge Lakes began to feel like a neighborhood again, not a battleground. At the next monthly meeting, the clubhouse was full again, but this time, the air wasn't tense. It was light, almost hopeful. Board member Kim, now interim president, stood at the front. No podium, no power plays, just a circle of chairs and a clipboard full of practical items. We've got real business to get to, she said, starting with stormwater. The counties offered to partner with us on a legal easement process with Mr. Mitchell, and they'll help fund drainage. It's long overdue. All eyes turned toward Ryan, sitting quietly near the back. He gave a respectful nod. I'm willing to work with the board, he said, so long as the board stops working against its own people. That got a few at first, then spreading. One of the longtime residents, Mr. Donnelly, stood up. I've lived here 20 years. Karen's the reason I stopped coming to these meetings. I didn't realize how far things had gone. Ryan, thanks for standing up. Someone else added, you know, it might be nice to have someone like him on the board. A few people laughed, but the idea landed. Kim turned. Ryan, he raised a brow. I've got a kid, a job, and a lake that apparently comes with legal landmines. You sure you want me? Kim smiled. We could use someone who knows where the landmines are buried. Later that week, Ryan and Grace sat on their dock as the sun dipped below the trees. A soft breeze stirred the water, gentle ripples kissing the shoreline. It was quiet, not the tense, just real, earned quiet. Grace looked up at him. You gonna do it? Join the board. Ryan exhaled. If I don't, someone like Karen will again. And next time, they might be smarter about hiding it. She nodded, eyes on the stars. I'm glad she's gone. So's the whole street. He chuckled from across the lake. A few new porch lights had been added. Warm glows. Children's laughter echoed faintly from another dock. Someone strummed a guitar in the distance, for the first time in months. People weren't afraid to enjoy their own homes. Karen's house sat dark and empty for a few more weeks, before a small for sale sign appeared on the lawn. No loud listings. No public open houses. Just quiet exit. Ryan never heard from her again, but word eventually reached him through the grapevine. She'd moved to a condo complex on the other side of the county. No lake, no HOA leadership role. Another unit. In a building where someone else ran the show. Maybe that was the real punishment. Not public shame, but irrelevance. On the first warm Saturday of spring, the HOA held its first real community event in years. No clipboards, no surveys, just food, music, kids, and laughter. Grace helped hang lanterns. Ryan grilled hot dogs. And Kim, clipboard still in hand, but this time with a smile, stood beside a sign that read, Pine Ridge Lakes, a community that listens. Midway through the event, a few residents asked Ryan to say a few words. He kept it short. I didn't set out to fight anyone, he began. But sometimes, silence lets the wrong people get too loud. I'm glad we found our voice again. Let's not lose it. Cheers erupted. Someone handed him a root beer. Grace wrapped her arms around his waist. Think we'll have fireworks? This year, Dad. Ryan smiled. We'll light M from the dock ourselves. As the sun set over the lake, the reflection on the water shimmered gold. Almost like it had forgiven everything. The same lake that Karen once tried to control was now what brought everyone back together. It had always belonged to Ryan legally, but now it belonged to the people emotionally. And finally, peace had settled in. Not because the rules changed, but because the power did.